Hi, and welcome to this episode of Resilience Pod. Today, we're going to be talking about periodization. And I know that's something that comes up sometimes, and a lot of people don't know what it means. So we're going to get into it today and try to make it fun, I guess.
As fun as we can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jess, what is periodization?
So periodization is the phases or the changes that your programming might undergo over a period of time. So some people might end up feeling like they're stuck in the same program for a really, really long time, and they might be doing the same thing over and over and over again and thinking that nothing is changing, right? So we want to make these little changes over time, which is called periodization, in order to keep getting advancement in your programming.
Okay. A lot of the times we look at periodization as, well, at least for me, I look at it as maybe like a year-long goal where you have like a long-term plan. And if I'm working with somebody, and you come to me and you say, my goal is to lose 10,000 pounds. My goal is to run a marathon on Mount Everest. Whatever it is.
These are some crazy goals that you're dealing with.
We want about a year to prepare for that, if we can.
I mean, at minimum.
Yeah. I think that's pretty reasonable. But like we're looking at that like time frame where we can take a reasonable amount of time to get you to that kind of a goal. Or like, again, if you're training for it could be something else. It could be coming out of injury. It could be entering a sport. Some people have aesthetic goals, whether that's like, I want to look or feel a certain way in my body by the time I go on this trip. And that doesn't have to be a year. A year is always the kind of gold standard that we think of. It's an easy unit of time to work with because we can divide that up into months, and we'll talk about the different types of periodization cycles or blocks or phases that you can use. But that being said, it allows us to figure out what kind of training we're going to use with you and play with the variables. And those variables can include volume, which would be like number of days, sets, that kind of thing. It can be intensity, which is like RPE or like reps. So rate of perceived exertion. Do you want to explain that?
If people don't know what RPE is, it's commonly
then get out. No, just kidding.
It's commonly used in the training world as rate of perceived exertion. Some trainers like to use it, some don't. But it's usually out of 10, and 10 being that's your absolute maximum.
Like you could do no more reps.
That was it. That is everything in the tank. 10 out of 10. 9 being that you might have had 1 rep left, or very close to your absolute max. Yeah. 2 being you might have 2 reps left and close-ish to a higher end of difficulty. 7 being like that was manageable. And if you've ever worked with me, you've definitely heard me say, give me a 1 out of 10, how difficult that was, and you cannot say 7 because so often people choose 7. And I swear if I hear 7 again.
7.
So my clients are allowed to say 6.8. They're allowed to say 8.1, but they cannot say 7. But it's really helpful when in your own training to kind of help you push yourself, especially if you're doing a program on your own without a trainer. So,
yeah, and in respect to this, that's one of the variables that we can actually program into these cycles of exercise. In the programs themselves, we might be asking for RPE 7. We might be asking for RPE 8, RPE 9, right? And what that means is that,
I was just going to say, and that can change in different phases of the periodization, right? So you might be in a high intensity block, for example, where you might have the expectation that your RPE is, 8.5 throughout the entire set, maybe 9. Right? And then you might have a deload where the intensity expectation is closer to a 6 or my favorite number when it comes to RPE 7.
4. Oh, wait, what?
So that can be a variable that's really effective
Yep.
to help with that.
And the last kind of major variable, there's other variables, but the last major variable that we'll talk about is exercise selection. Because for these types of things, if you're going into this, and you have the program that you're doing, and we're within, say, like a mesocycle or something like that, we might just change the exercises that you're doing. So we're still hitting, it still might be like a shoulder exercise, but it's a different shoulder exercise. It keeps it fresh for you. It still keeps development of the muscle. And it also helps with something that Jess is an expert in, which is muscle confusion.
It's just throwing back muscle confusion.
Oh, yeah.
But going back to what you said, I'm going to ignore that. And going back to what you said about
called a
how it
callback,
might be a
kids.
similar movement, right? So for example, I have a client right now that we've been working on a lot of unilateral exercises.
Which is like per side.
Yes, unilateral per side, trying to work and close that gap. Yeah. We're dancing like robots in case anyone is not watching the video. So we're doing a lot of unilateral exercises to try to close the gap between her two legs in strength. But now...
Wow. Word selection.
Yeah, that came out weird, didn't it? Okay. Okay, close the difference in strength between the legs. Oh, that still sounds bad. I can't make it sound good. Okay, I'll just pretend. Yeah, keep on. Okay, anyway, so now we've gone back to bilateral exercises to see where we're actually at now that we've gained more strength in the weaker side, right? So we're still doing squats. They're both squats. We've just done unilateral, and now we're doing bilateral to try to see how that goes.
Right. So that all said, it's, that's kind of what periodization is. It's a really formal term for something that happens most of the time. Anyway, you whether you buy a program or you're following an influencer's program or something like that, you'll do it for a specific amount of time, or you'll do it for as long as you want to until you get sick of it, and then you'll do something else. And that's really, we're just formalizing that and putting that mechanism into like an organized, planned state, as it were. So it's the other part of periodization is it allows us to build in really important things that in my previous example, when you're just like doing the same thing over and over, or like getting it off of an influencer site or what have you. And I'm not trying to I'm throwing shade at influencers a little bit. I am, and I'm okay with that. It allows us to build in things like recovery or deload, as you had mentioned earlier, blocks, which are super important for you maintaining, your progress, because part of progress is not just pushing. It's taking a minute, right? You can't just stay awake all day. You need to go to sleep for a little while every day, and that in the like wider periodization, it's kind of the same. Not that you need to go to sleep, but you need to take a break, do a deload, let your body recover, and like really deep, good recovery, and then head back into the work.
Which is one of the things that I think most people are lacking when they do their own programming.
Yep.
Right? And that's why so many people just get so sick of it and fall off, because they think they're always supposed to be pushing for that, inch better, right? And that's not actually always the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to take a step back and have that recovery period. I know for myself, I'll take sometimes 2 or 3 weeks off from heavy lifting, for example, and focus on something else, and then come back and I'm stronger than I was 3 weeks ago because my body's had this extended rest. And this is where you can use that muscle confusion if you really wanted to, Cam, right? Where you've changed it up a little bit, and when you re-bring that stimulus back in, you actually get a better result.
Yep. And the other part of it too is, and just going back to kind of the other side, is that for most people, when they do the, you download a program, and I've heard this from multiple clients where they're coming to us and they're saying, look, I've been doing the same program for 6 months, 8 months, whatever. And
how boring.
Right. Well, I mean, but with this built-in understanding that there's some great benefit from just like hammering the same program over and over and over. And usually there's some caveat where they'll say something along the lines of, but I haven't done it for a couple of months, and I really haven't done anything for a couple of months since then. Guess what? You just went through your deload block without knowing it, but that's because of that, like basically that burnout. And that's not ideal to fully burn out
and have to take a few months off, because that does set you back further than taking 1 or 2 weeks.
Why are you touching me right now?
I needed to put my other foot up, and you happen to be close.
Okay.
You're reading into it.
I'm not reading into it. It's happening. It's on camera.
Now I want to do it more because it bothers you.
It doesn't bother me. I'm just curious about what's happening.
It's a footrest.
It's okay. I am now. Yeah. I was a smart and equitable partner, but now I'm a footrest.
But here's an example, right? So like, let's say that we are, we're really good at cooking, and we get so good at cooking, and we're cooking every single day. And then all of a sudden we're just so sick of cooking these amazing meals that you just switch to ordering food. And you start ordering food for weeks, for months. And it feels like you've kind of undone the progress you've done. But if you just took it a little bit more manageable in the first place, and were allowed some takeout at the same time as you were making amazing meals, you might have been able to sustain that routine. It's kind of the same concept.
And that really is a great segue into the next part of this, which is talking about different goals. Because
Cam, keeping me on track.
First thing that we're going to talk about is actually fat loss. So in our last podcast, we talked about body composition change, right, as a preferred term to weight loss. This, I'm being specific, so in case anybody wants to call us out, I'm specifically saying if your goal is to lose like fat percentage on the body, that's what we're talking about, okay? So not the generalized weight loss, measurable actual fat loss. So for periodization, where that would come in is you can cycle between something like a higher intensity metabolic program and a strength phase. Like you can kind of go back and forth between those. And again, like modifying them, changing them to better adapt to your adaptations as this progresses, right? And usually that's in concert with other things like diet and behavior changes, sleep hygiene, things like that. But the actual benefit that you can get from really focusing into that like long-term plan, because as we talked about last time as well, it's a long-term plan that you need to make those changes in the body, to make those changes to the body composition. So that being said, this is a great way to add structure to that long-term plan, and get the best results that you possibly can from it, right? Now, if you're looking for something like muscle gain, you might be cycling between like volume, which we talked about a little bit earlier, so the high reps and sets, and intensity, which would be higher weight, lower rep, right? So you're kind of like working between that idea of like strength and hypertrophy, or whatever.
Well, it depends muscle gain can mean two things, right? It can mean overall strength, or it can mean hypertrophy. So that would be a whole other podcast.
I think it's pretty simple.
But yeah, you would want to cycle between two different versions so that you're getting the best muscle progress you possibly can without overloading tissue with too much volume, for example, because higher intensity work can sometimes be actually easier to recover from than volume, which is kind of silly because a lot of people would think the opposite. But you get more rest with intensity than you do with volume.
Yeah, volume is just like smashing a bunch of stuff into a workout, and intensity is like, I left that heavy, now it take a minute. I picked it up, then I put it down, now I'm going to take a minute. And that's the guys that are like on their phones in the cage. Yeah, totally.
But we'll talk more about that in another podcast, because there is very much value in taking long rests in between sets, but it depends what your goals are.
And it depends on like what kind of a phase you're in too.
What kind of phase you're in, exactly.
So one that's not super great for taking long breaks would be something like cardio endurance. Just my opinion. But like cardio endurance,
which is how you see most training formulated around, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's true, but You know, like I'm thinking somebody like training for something like a marathon or something. You know, like you start with the base building, so they have to get their like cardio levels up. So that's like going to be a whole phase of the training. They're going to do the tempo work to make sure that they're able to sustain through, like if you're doing a marathon or something like that, obviously you need that endurance to sustain yourself through the whole thing. So you have to be strong enough, and your muscles have to be pliable enough, and you have to have that.
And it's a lot of volume to train into cardio endurance, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such long periods and repetitive motions. So very high instances of injuries if you don't manage that volume or those phases appropriately.
Yep. And then, you know, another phase of that would be intervals, which would be, again, like, and that might be more for like racing, for like starts and like things like that. And then tapering for, again, taking that time to just kind of like deload. And usually there's timing around like when a marathon is. You might go into the tapering phase after the marathon happens, because you now don't need to train into that anymore. You might go into that actually before the training happens, or before the event happens. Pardon me. So yeah, like, because you don't want to be training into intensity potentially if you're
right up before, because then you haven't recovered. So remember how we said taking that 2 to 3 week break can actually give you a better result.
Yeah.
So for example, in cardio endurance, you really do want that taper period prior, and then afterwards you have a more, like, it's not even a taper, it's like a pure actual rest, because that's a cardio endurance is like a whole other animal, because there's a massive nervous system component to that amount of volume and load.
Yeah, and again, that's where periodization would be
again, comes in super handy
and be so important. Yeah. So, and then the last one I think we'll talk about, the second to last one we'll talk about, is injury recovery. You know, which is like a gradual return to working out, and increases in volume and intensity. You know, as you come back into regularity of training after an extended period away. And that actually mirrors the next one that I'll talk about, because beginners basically have a very similar kind of a protocol, I would say, to the injury recovery, because you're coming into it. So it's a gradual increase in the amount of like intensity and volume that you're getting, and making sure that it's manageable, and making sure that it's
nothing shows up. Right? Well, like I always say, when
nothing shows up.
Yeah. So
is that me waiting for my mom to get me from the soccer practice? Nothing shows up.
No, what I say this often with beginners is we're going to move slowly in the beginning, because things that you didn't realize could be problems will show up now, because we're increasing volume and intensity, right? So you might have you've never had a pain in your hip, but maybe there's something there that we've just never hit the threshold for until we start training.
I like how you rolled your R on the word threshold.
Yes, my francophone. I can't help it. So sometimes you'll notice, sometimes you'll notice that when you start training, people say, well, I'm starting to get hurt all the time. No, things are just appearing because you're starting to hit thresholds that you weren't hitting before.
Thresholds.
How should I say it?
Thresholds.
Threshold. There, is that better?
It sounds like you're doing a really mean impersonation of me.
I think I'll use my credit card. Like that.
What? What's happening?
Listeners, if you know, you know.
I'm so far out of the zeitgeist.
Okay.
I sit on the periphery and watch for predators. Going back to like talking about beginners again, the other part of it is that beginners will start to experience potentially DOMs, and people coming back from injury recovery too. But you know, like, we'll go into the considerations here in just a second. But like, a lot of times if you're coming in as a beginner, you haven't experienced for a while that post-workout stiffness or soreness or any of that stuff, and that can be pretty scary. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, it's just throwing it out there. It's great to have a coach to report that stuff to, so that they can walk you through what's happening and provide levels of support appropriate to, you know, what you need.
You know, and program modifications in order to help with that,
yeah.
Right? And also what kind of things you can do when you're that sore to actually make it feel better versus do nothing for extended periods, which is a really common thing when people are really sore.
And the other part of that too is that, you know, in periodization, and again, we'll get into the like different types of like cycles that we can talk about, or periods that we can talk about. But the other considerations for like these goals are going to be your age, are going to be your experience, right? So that's what differentiates beginner. And we don't mean to say that with any level of malice towards somebody that's just starting. Like, hello, welcome. We're so glad that you're here if you're just showing up. And
beginners are great because you don't have to undo all their weird habits.
Experienced people are great too. But like another consideration is like a required specificity, and again that goes into, is it injury recovery and you have specific needs from the injury? Is it like you're training for a marathon, so there's very specific needs with that? Do you have, say, like a wedding coming up and you are interested in body composition change? Well, there's specific needs that we need to talk about in that too. So that's another consideration we have to take. And then life events is another one that I like to kind of put into a list like this, because it changes the calculus of your motivation if things happen in life. And that can be joyful things, and that can be sorrowful things, and that can be very mundane things. It can be like just that work's getting in the way. It can be the birth of a child. It can be the death of a character on TV, because I don't want anything bad to happen to you.
Right. And I was going to say...
Game of Thrones?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and it's important to, if you're more of a lifestyle trainee, it's more important to plan your periodization around life events too.
Yeah.
Because if you know you're about to enter a period of high stress, or you're beside yourself because your favorite character on TV has died, whatever that might be, right? It's important that you know that you only have one gas tank. And that one gas tank holds all of your energy. And if half of your energy is going towards one thing, do you really expect yourself to be able to do really high intensity RPE 9 out of 10 work?
Yeah.
That wouldn't be fair, because then you're going to go home with complete burnout. And if you have a family, now you have absolutely nothing left.
Yeah.
Right? So it's important to manage that energy load according to life events. I think that's one of the most important ones, actually.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, too, I once owned a bus that had 2 gas tanks.
You had a nice backup.
Yeah, it was a very small tank. It was quite useless, actually. And I think that's actually a good, like, kind of allegory, is that what that is? To like what people think. They think they can push themselves right to the end and then like utilize something to...
Then how are you going to refill the tank?
To whether it's like turning to energy drinks or turning to like running yourself at that like adrenal like adrenal burnout, like end time where you just always feel like crap and can't get up in the morning and whatever else happens.
The thing about adrenal burnout and other things like that is then when you do think you've filled your tank, you're literally only halfway, and you just never feel like you can get that full tank again, and that's not a good place to be in.
And again, that's kind of like where, I mean, periodization, and especially if you're like working with a coach who is, kind of managing that aspect for you, because,
because that's the major part of their job.
Right. Well, I mean, and amongst other things, it is a major part, I would say.
That's what I meant. Not the only.
Yeah. So like that can help to mitigate those types of things, because the coach can be like, I think we're pushing too hard. We might dial it back a bit. And so now let's to get into that. Let's talk about the differences between the types of cycles. So we have a macro, a meso, and a micro. And there's a lot of debate about the timescales that these work within. And it is a relatively subjective kind of definition, because again, a macrocycle, if you are coming to see a trainer and you give that trainer 6 months to make changes, well, that's your macrocycle, right? To hit your goal, I'm only giving you 6 months. And that mitigates the amount of benefit that we can get from any amount of training. Like we've talked about it before, where yes, you see celebrities do amazing things within a few months' time, but that typically involves them having all kinds of
resources,
money spent on things that are both legal and quasi-legal to get themselves into like movie shape in short order. Like the things that these people do are absolutely intense, and that's why it's worthy of story. But in a macrocycle, we'll talk about that as a year's time, just to be easy. And that could be, for some people, that could be 2 years. For some people, that could be 5 years. And for, just the sake of ease and argument, let's just call it a year for most, right? So you have a goal, and the goal might be, I want to lose 20 pounds. And I mean, when I would talk to a client, I would articulate that more effectively than just saying, I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to like understand what you mean by that.
To you?
Yeah, exactly. And I might get us to change that statement because, and again, as we've talked about in previous episodes, going into a place of lack is a really negative space to stay in, and you never quite win with that, right? I know, like, you know, there is always the stories of people that have done these things, but understand that stories are always the exception to the rule. It's what makes them story worthy, is that they did the thing that most other people couldn't. And I'm not saying you're not special. Everybody's special, millennials. But the the punchline
Thanks
of it,
for the job.
the punchline of it is that we have to prepare for the reality that you might not be the person that makes the cover of Life magazine.
And usually when you double, like, this is a sidebar, obviously.
Usually once you devil.
No, I said
Double.
delve deeper.
Delve.
I was about to say delve deeper. Is that a word? Now I'm confused.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Once you delve deeper, most people just say, oh, well, I just want to feel better.
Yeah.
I want to feel more comfortable in my body. And then
Yeah.
you say, what does that mean? Well, I want to be stronger. Okay, what does stronger mean to you? Well, I want to be able to do this thing, and I want to be able to do a push-up.
Right.
Right? So now we have something that it's actually more tangible.
Yeah.
But that's another side.
And that's, yeah, so like, I mean, like, you know, if your macrocycle is a year and you say, like, I want to be able to do a push-up by the end of this year.
I can do
like,
that.
Well, like, we can set that goal. Like 6 to 12 months is completely reasonable for something like that. Of course it is. You know, and then if you're training for a race, if you're planning for a wedding, if you've got some other life event coming up, like, that's a reasonable amount of time to talk about making changes that, like, head you in that direction. When we talk about a mesocycle, it's literally that block of training. So in our case, that would be like the program that I write. It might be a 4-week, it might be a 6-week, it might be an 8-week. You know, it could be up to 12 weeks. And it might be, you know, 3-4 week cycles that are very similar in like scope and practice. Again, utilizing changes in volume, intensity, and exercise selection to keep it fresh for you, but really hammering that same kind of aspect of whether it's hypertrophy or you know, strength or
And that's kind of how I see those periodization blocks.
Yeah.
This is in that meso kind of area, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, this period we're working on a strength for that push-up. So we're going to be doing, you know, more pressing exercises that can be extrapolated into that. The next one, I've noticed that there's some technique stuff. So
Yeah.
the next one is going to be more technique focused, but still maintaining that strength. The next one, we're going to need a little bit more hypertrophy. So we're going, as an example, right?
Yeah, as an example.
Then we would go more into micro phases, which is focus on the next 1 to 2 weeks. So what needs to change or adapt in this next workout or this next week, right? So let's say the client is struggling, or you are struggling with shoulder activation prior to a push-up.
What does shoulder activation mean? I can activate my shoulders all I want. Look, boop, 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 boop. What does it mean?
Thank you.
Boop, boop,
So he's trying to jab at me back for the muscle confusion thing.
I'm not.
That's what's
Actually,
happening
I'm just
right
having
now.
a good time right now.
So getting
I
good
forgot about
shoulder
that whole
activation. For example, so in a push-up, you would want to create more external rotation tension prior to the push-up, and you would want to have good protraction at the shoulder blades. So let's say for that next 1 to 2 weeks, we're going to focus on getting a good setting position prior to the push-up. That would be a micro goal.
God, you're a nerd. Did anybody understand half of those words? Were part of those French?
No.
Oh. She just got really technical to flex right there.
I'm gonna say right now that most, you know, people that work in fitness are actually major nerds, FYI.
Oh yeah, I'm totally a nerd, but
They're just nerds who like fitness.
oh, I was gonna say I like Star Trek. Huh.
I also like Star Trek, but that's
to give
just another sidebar.
My life some thought. But yeah, I mean, again, the microcycle, yeah, totally. It's about being more granular in the moment, right? So yeah, like, is it like talking about this workout? You show up and you stubbed your toe before you came in, and like you're doing.
Did that help with your shoulder activation?
Did that, or does it, but does that hinder your shoulder activation? Because now in a plank, your foot hurts when you try to go into like that push-up position. Mm-hmm. So now it's harder to concentrate on doing that. So how is the coach, or how are you in the workout going to change that? And that's where we're talking about the microcycle, right? That little bit in, the experience, that focus into now. So that being said, like with all of that, why is any of this important? We've alluded to that in the talk so far, right? We've talked a lot about the benefits of this, and that's really what the whole thing has been. But it keeps you on track, right? Like that's the point. To reach your goals, you need to stay on track. And to stay on track, you kind of need a roadmap. You got to know where you're going and how to get there.
And we've killed to death the concept of consistency and how consistency matters so much. So if you go through different phases that keep things interesting and manageable, guess what gets better?
Yeah, exactly.
Your consistency.
Well, and if you're working with a coach too, if the coach has a plan and they're not just scrambling to come up with something every single time, it allows them to focus more into other parts of your needs and really address those, which can help you hit those goals faster still or more effectively. Are you looking in things like muscle growth or weight loss, it can be really effective for the coach to be really like watching in on what you're doing to make sure that like everything in technique is happening correctly, as Jess was talking about activations and things like that. It can be really helpful to have the coach be like more globally kind of like paying attention to the things going on around, so that they're not, again, just focused on scrambling to like, oh, it's going to be cool to do this next time. Right. And keeping you on track and being able to track that stuff and be sure that you're getting what you need out of the experience, right?
Right. And a great example of that is I usually ask my clients repeatedly, like, what do you have going on in the next... Repeatedly. What's going on in the next month? What's going on in the next 2? Do you have a vacation? What are you planning? Like, so this is like that future planning aspect. And in this relationship, it's my job. But if you're doing this on your own, it's important to plan, well, I know I'm going to be on vacation in 3 weeks. So do I have a plan for while I'm on vacation? Am I just vacationing? And am I going to work out before I go? Am I going to work? Like, just these little questions can really help you. I'm not saying obsess about it, but a little bit of thought into it can really, really help that consistency in that plan.
Oh, absolutely.
And keep that progress.
And to keep that progress going. And that's really what it's about, right? Like everything about is about efficacy for your experience, right? Making sure that you're getting what you need out of the experience. And that's literally the most important part. If you're working with a coach, and we are available, if you're working with a coach, again, these types of things, along with a lot of other things that go into the programming beyond periodization, it's just what we're focusing on today. Those things are kind of why the efficacy of the workouts goes up when you're working with a coach. That's also like something that you can do on your own, of course. Like you can sell your own house, but a lot of people hire a realtor because it sucks to sell a house. So coming up with that plan, sorry, I'm just going to finish the thought. Coming up with that plan is a lot of work, but if it is a person's job, then you're going to an expert for that. So
what I was going to say is you're basically talking about the concept of mental load.
Mental load.
Right? And a lot of people don't realize that mental load is an entire job in itself. So if you have help with mental load for something in your life, it really does take a lot of that energy off of you. In work life, right, you have a manager. In fitness, you might have a coach, right? You might have a mentor that helps you think about things you can't. So that can take something off of you if that's something that you can afford to work with.
Yeah, and there's various ways of doing that, right? And again, I'm self-marketing here for us, but we offer an online coaching option that allows us to write bespoke custom programs for you, utilizing the platform that we have built ourselves with the help of our friends, and all with BC labor. We love that. And it's a really effective way to, and a really cost-effective way, I should say, for you to get coach oversight and really refined programs that speak to your needs for a reasonable price.
And you just get to show up. That's
Yeah.
the best part, right? So you get to show up, you get to do your workout, and you don't have to take on that mental load. We'll do that for you, and we check in with you. So it makes it a lot easier on you, because you probably have enough stuff going on in your life that taking on that little bit of extra is difficult. You have the ability to show up for your workout, but doing all that planning might just be too much. So that's why people like us exist, is to just take that off of you.
Yeah, I mean, and to be experts in helping you get to your goals as well. We're not just... We're not therapists.
And we got to say, we're pretty excited about helping people with goals. It's really fun to see when somebody hits something that they really wanted. And I can't tell you how many times I felt so much pride in my clients for doing that work. So.
Oh, I mean, it's kind of fun. Really quick aside, really quick story. We have a client who has been with me for a while, and he's gone through such a life of stories in the time even that he's been training with us, and just fascinating. The guy could write a book at this point, I'm pretty sure. It would be interesting. It would totally be Oscar bait if they made it into a movie, but the book would be really captivating, I think. That all being said, we were going through the last Thursday, the workout that we were doing, and one of his big goals has been to get back to a bench press weight that he had set before in his life. And it's been difficult because there's been a lot of setbacks, and there's been a lot of ups and downs, and health concerns and things like that. And just casually as ever, he did 6 reps of at 225, which just casually, just there's a little struggle near the end. We always have our pins set, so it would be safe if he failed. But I was also, just kind of spotting him and making sure that things were going well. And, he was in the middle of a story, and he started his set. And
didn't even realize it was 225, did he?
And then, he kind of sits up and he goes, "So what was that?" And I said, "Well, that was 225 for 6. And it's the heaviest that he's done by, actually a significant amount. It was just he was just kind of huh, and you could tell he wanted to celebrate, but he was keeping it cool.
I always think it's interesting that people don't celebrate that little moment, and it's just you did the thing. Give yourself the moment to enjoy it. We don't need to go to the next thing right away.
The story about the weird vegetable thing that you went to at the rodeo can wait. Let's
take a moment.
Now he knows who I'm talking about. Let's take the second, because you just
did the thing.
You just did the thing.
I'm so proud of you. Do I have to jump up and down because you're not doing it? Because I'm about to.
Well, because he's hired from doing that set. Yeah. But it was just super like I said, that kind of stuff is really, again, it's we've been working on this. We've been going through periodization. As an example, we've been going through periodization, and it's slow, steady progress, but it's progress nonetheless.
And it happened.
And it happened, right? And so hopefully he doesn't just fire me at this point. I made it. Bye. But now we're going to set a new goal, and the new goal is going to be all about, something else, and we're going to figure out how to do that. And he's in the mix for that. And he doesn't train that often. It's not like he's training 6 times a week or something like that. He does a workout with me once a week, and he has done that regularly through thick and thin, through ups and downs, through all of that. The guy has always shown up. Credit to him fully for that, and that's tough to do.
And that's the consistency that we're talking about, right? So, and that's why periodization is so important, because it enables that consistency to match up with those considerations like life events, as Kam has kind of alluded to here.
Yeah, and that is the really kind of interesting part is that it's not necessarily about even in periodization, it's not necessarily about needing so much volume. You don't need to work out 5 days a week, 10 days a week, whatever. Yeah, that's right, 10 days a week. It's the follow up to the Beatles song, 8 days a week, with inflation. So it's about that consistency. It's about having the plan. It's about following the plan. It's about having the, understanding of the macrocycle, the mesocycle, the microcycle, and getting through all of those components and maintaining your stability through that, right? And stability only in the aspect of the regularity of it, right? And again, like Jess said, there's all kinds of life stuff that happens. Your battery gets drained, and it's tough. And that's, again, where we go into like microcycles and how are we going to change it to address how you're feeling today and what needs do you have to be met? And that might be less training on that day, right? All of that is available. All of that is amazing in terms of, how we get you to your goals. And so that being said, I think that, I just want to say that, like, we as coaches are always advocates for you in your success. And so hopefully this gives you something to take away, something to understand, something that you learned today that can help you in your pursuit of your goals and your, further enjoyment of life. Or in French, it would be, I don't speak French.
Joie de vivre.
That's right. Yeah. Joy de vivre. Garconi.
What's Garconi?
I'm calling over the Garconi.
Oh, garçon?
Yeah, the Garconi.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Italian.
Okay.
Garconi.
Well, now that Cam's butchered the French language,
Fragile.
I think this is a great time to conclude this podcast. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Cam, for butchering the French language without being prompted
Bonjour.
to do so. And we hope you have a great day. And remember, you're always welcome to reach out. We're here for you.
We would love to work with you. We'd love to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Bye.